All right, so where did we leave off? What was I doing last time? Penciling a double page spread? What was that, like 10 weeks ago? 25 weeks ago? 50,000 weeks ago? I don't know. Bro's been inking this double page spread for 5 weeks. Okay, so we're back. We're still on that double page spread. We're still working on that double page spread. I finished the inks on it. And now I want to kind of walk you guys through what I did to get to the point where I feel good about the inks. I'm ready to color them. I guess that there's a few factors. There's a few things that I run into when I'm inking. Inking is such a different animal than penciling. When you're penciling, you're figuring out the drawing. But with inking, you're sort of setting that in stone. You're sort of making a decision. Sure, you can change things digitally later down the line, but inking is like, I'm etching this into a stone tablet. You know, this is the finalization. This is the decision. I find myself when I'm inking making decisions depending on these factors. One of them would be storytelling. If you throw a line clean, it's something that might be a little bit more factory made. It might be something that's made by a CNC machine. But if you throw something with a jagged line or an etched line or, you know, a ... that is maybe more handcrafted, it's aged, stuff like that. You're telling a story with the inks, the way you're making marks, the way you're throwing lines. Another thing that I want to talk about that I feel like I struggled with more so in my beginning stages of making comic books, that would probably be what I'm going to term as inking anxiety, or like inking panic, where you have the board in front of you. You got the tack pen, you got the ink nib, you got the brush, you got the whatever, and you don't want to mess up, and you're hesitating, and you don't want to make a mark, you don't want to throw a line, you don't want to, you know, what if this doesn't turn out? You know, I like the way the pencils look. What if it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to? What if it doesn't turn out the way that I intended? What if I completely mess it up? What if it looks like ass after this? I feel as though inking panic and inking anxiety is something that you just have to pile drive through. Like, it's something that you just have to. I've found that whenever I put less effort into making the mark, I like the finished image more. But if I'm really painstakingly making that line or making that mark, or I'm white knuckling the tool that I'm using to ink, I'm gonna look back and I'm gonna go, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. That didn't. I don't like the way that looks. Making marks more gesturally, more openly, and accepting the marks that you make, it's sort of a surprise when you see the finished image and you're like, oh, this turned out good. It's turned out, you know, sort of how I feel about general penciling. And that is that, like, if you look at anybody's pencils, always have a samey look to them across all artists, in my opinion. But the inks is where the artistry comes through. That's where the style comes through. That's where the voice comes through. Inking, I feel like, also comes from your background of who you were as an artist before you made pencil and ink on paper drawings. Karl Kopinski, for instance, painter, oil painter, watercolor, portrait artist, sort of has a painterly quality to his inks, to his brushwork, whatever he's using. It could be a micron, it could be a brush pen. It's going to have a painterly, sort of hatchy, gestural, painterly mark. Whereas me personally, my background, I would say, is in charcoal. A lot of my work that I was obsessed with doing throughout art college was charcoal drawings. But what charcoal drawing is to me is a back and forth between erasing and mark making, because you're sort of working for the drawing. You're doing labor, and there's a certain work that goes into the drawing to make the drawing feel earned, if that makes any sense. Because with charcoal drawing, you don't just make a single mark and, oh my gosh, that's exactly the mark that I want to make. You know, you're working on toned paper, you're working on just dirty, your hands are filthy, your knuckles, the side of your hand, you're smudging. Each fingertip has a different level of charcoal on it, you know? Your pinky is your clean finger, and you're sort of making marks with your pinky, but then your middle finger is the dirty one, and then you're able to make different marks with that. And then you have your kneaded erasers, stuff like that. A clean charcoal drawing is maybe less effective, but that's I guess subject to the medium of charcoal. But okay, enough about charcoal. I'm going to put David Aha, Alex Toth, and John Paul Leon in the same pool, even though they're all very different artists. These are dudes who use thick, black geometry and shapes and broad, heavy strokes. Alex Toth, Alex Toth, Alex Toth was a lot more about efficiency and clarity and editing, where I feel like John Paul Leon and David Aha are more in the design space. All in all, my number one art parent is John Paul Leon. He did this book through a multi-year period in the early 2000s called The Wintermen that I have on my shelf right back there. And that is sort of my personal art Bible. And I feel like that's important for each artist to have sort of a work or a comic book, a comic series, a trade paperback that is like their God. I was able to get my hands on the artist edition. I don't own one personally, but my school had a library where the artist edition was something that they collected. His way of going back and forth with ink and whiteout was very similar to the way that I knew how to go back and forth with an eraser and a piece of charcoal. And I like that aspect of inking. I wouldn't say so much that I have a direct single mark making, boom, there it is. I'm gonna dip my pen in the brush, make a stroke, and that's it. I kind of want to play and mess and work with the materials. Different brands of inks. I have different white inks. Some work better than others. Like this is the Speedball. I just got this one. I have the Deleter White that got just completely solid. But I put some water in there, so I'm seeing how that, if it revives at all. And then I also, of course, have the Presto correction pen, which definitely dries the best and works the best for me. But if you apply it in multiple layers, it's going to kind of create a caking effect, or like it's going to have some topography to it. But that might help you make a jagged line, you know, if you're drawing an oil drum or you're drawing a Humvee tire. That might help you make the mark that is true in that scenario. So I guess that's why I'm kind of hesitant to give inking advice or inking tips. I'm just kind of more talking about my personal process and what I have found works for me and the type of work that I like. To me, to not at some point question the validity of the work and to push it further and work it more, that legitimizes it for me. And it's just sort of, it's not like in my mind I go click, oh, there it is, oh, I'm done. I'm sorry if this video is getting a little abstract and a little heady and a little woo-woo. But that's kind of how you have to talk about art and your art practice, is because like it is an abstract concept of how do you explain what you like and where you get to the point where you are satisfied with your work, you know. Even though I'm working with black and white material, nothing is black and white. I feel like, you know, to explain to you my thought process, I'm doing my best. Okay. The way I generally feel about inking is that a good drawing and a good image, a good composition is worth going through mood swings with and sort of trusting yourself that you are going to get there. A good drawing is worth fighting for and sort of fighting with. Sure, that might increase the hours of work that I put into inking a page. And you might just go, why the fuck don't you just do it digitally? Why don't you just go full digital process? And I do engage with digital processes. I guess I jump into digital as soon as I'm satisfied with the traditional work. Or in this case, with this double page spread, I was working on it at a convention. I was working at it in different places. It was just getting smudgy, and it was getting to the point where it was like, all right, if I keep pushing this, it's going to be unrecognizable to a point. So I did scan it in, throw it into Photoshop. I changed the levels. I make everything either black and white, throw it into Clip Studio Paint, and then I drop out the white layer, do all that fancy shit, separate the inks from the paper, play with tone, I play with line, I match it up. I'm just cleaning it up. It's just a cleanup. I guess the main ideas of this video is just drill into your process, become obsessed with it and protect it. I guess the second thing is choose your art parents. I have multiple art parents. Sure, John Paul Leone is like my number one most influence, but I do have those Bill Sienkiewicz, Sergio Topi, Claire Wendling flavors and sprinkles. Taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that, mixing it, and putting it in the cauldron of you is going to make it yours. This is sort of a different form of video that I made in the past, but if you enjoyed it, I would very much appreciate it if you left a like. Let me know what's up down in the comments. If there's things that you want to see from me, let me know. Thank you for watching. Bye, guys.